Thank you, everyone, and welcome to today's WaterNEXT industry matchmaking session focusing on water and AI. We are excited to host this session because we think it's a very timely topic, and we have three great speakers. My name is Nina Bader. I manage the WaterNEXT program at Foresight. And next slide. And before we get started, I would like to acknowledge with gratitude and respect the lands on which Foresight operates are the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I am joining you today from Vancouver, which is the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Next slide. Before we get started, I would like to say a few words about Foresight. We are Canada's largest clean tech innovation and adoption accelerator and help the world to do more with less sustainably. We do this through de-risking and simplifying public and private sector adoption of the world's best clean technologies. We have supported more than 1,400 ventures and collaborated with more than 2,000 stakeholders, right holders, and partners on both domestic and international level. This includes our partnership with the Dutch Water Alliance through the ICN. Next slide. A bit about WaterNEXT. WaterNEXT is Canada's largest water technology network, and it's an opportunity for us to create a network where we bring different stakeholders together from across the water innovation ecosystem to increase the adoption of market-ready solutions for some of the most pressing challenges we see today. We envision Canada to be one of the best places in the world to develop and commercialize innovative water technologies. And our goal, next slide, is to help Canada achieve less than 10% municipal and industrial water loss by 2033. We call this our under 10 in 10 promise. And we are aware that this is really an ambitious goal, but we think Canada is also really creating a lot of opportunities for water technologies. How do we do this? How do we support this goal? How do we support our network? We do this through acceleration programming, then through events like today, industry matchmaking, investor matchmaking, innovative partnerships with a variety of partners we can rely on, and then, of course, the engagement of different stakeholders across Canada. Next slide. This session, the industry matchmaking programming, is actually supported by the National Research Council of Canada, the Industrial Research Assistant Program, NRC IRAP. And we really value those partnerships. And I think Cliff is on the call today, and I would like to give you the microphone to say a few words about NRC IRAP.
Okay, so welcome to this cohort. I guess I'm joining. I've seen most of you before. You all have ITA CEAs? Yes. If you don't, go talk to Nina and she'll sort you out. So NRC IRAP is supports firms directly. They support firms via programming like at Foresight. So this programming is brought to you by the Clean Tech Sector team within IRAP. And if you want more details, you can reach out to me directly. I do want to spend a minute talking about the pilot programs. A lot of you have technologies that are approached TRL 7, and you can look at the Canada.ca definition TRL 7 if you haven't defined yourself yet. If you're at TRL 7 and you're ready to demonstrate something in a pilot to a customer or potential partner, this is a really good time because there's 3 programs this year. There's the BC Fast Pilot, there's a Fast Pilot Canadian Market, and there's an International Technology Pilot and Demonstration Programs. BC Fast Pilot's open now, so I'm going to post something in the chat after. And it's meant for BC companies demonstrating something in BC that's commercially relevant to you. So you demonstrate something that shows that your equipment, your process works. The customer, they might buy it, or they might partner with you and help you commercialize it. That kind of metric. The other 2 program, the Fast Pilot Canadian Markets, is the same, except it's for the Canadian market in general, so right across the country. And we have the International Technology and Pilot Demonstration. That's global markets, including the US, but excluding sanctioned countries, which I'm pretty sure US is not yet a sanctioned country, but enough said. I'm going to leave it be and just throw some stuff into the chat. I'm going to give it back to Nina.
Thank you so much, Cliff, for being here today and also for all your support you can provide to our ventures. And as Cliff said, if you have any questions, nice hat also, please send me an email with your questions. And with that, we want to move to the panel discussion, to today's panel discussion. And before I introduce our speakers, I would like to ask you all, if you can, to turn on your cameras so the speakers see who they're talking to. I think it always breaks the ice a bit, increases the engagement, and to put your name and your company name in the chat, just for everybody who knows who else is here, and to create some connections. And with that, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker, Neil Edwards. He is the CTO and co-founder of Fido Tech. He has a wealth of experience in telecommunication and IT and in starting up businesses, growing into successful SMEs with clients such as IBM, Virgin Media, and Sky. Fido is a world-leading technology, delivering verified volumetric results and enduring environmental, social, and economic outcomes for all from curated water data. Thank you, Neil. I know you're joining us from the UK, so we appreciate you joining us on such a late hour.
No problem, everybody.
Our second speaker is Saurabh Singh. He's the VP at Blue Tech Research, and he specializes in providing management consulting services in strategy, digital assessment, market intelligence, and due diligence for various water-focused utilities, corporates, municipalities, venture capitalists, and private equity clients. He is actually sharing a lot of valuable content and resources on LinkedIn about water and AI, and I've really enjoyed his posts over the past couple of weeks, and I thought that was worth sharing with the audience. Saurabh, thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot, Tina. Great to be here.
And our third speaker is Tim Southerns. He's the president of Digital Water Solutions, and they help utilities understand what's happening underground in their water distribution systems. They have a team with an extensive knowledge in artificial intelligence and real-time monitoring, and developed a patented acoustic leak detection and water networking monitoring equipment that gives the customer a window into their distribution system. Tim, thank you so much for being here today.
Nina, thanks for having us.
And last but not least, our moderator, Evan Pilkington. He's the strategic advisor for our WaterNEXT network, and he will be the moderator for today's session. I'll pass it on to you, Evan.
Great. Thanks, Nina, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm just going to start with a bit of housekeeping by echoing Nina's comments off the top that this is definitely intended to be a conversation. So if you know from past seminars that you've attended with us, please be sure to hit the raise hand button, introduce yourself when you ask a question so that our panelists and others on the call can look into your work, learn about what you do. It's a great chance to make connections, like Nina said. So thanks. And we'll have a team of people watching for comments, and we'll try to time it appropriately in with the conversation so that we can, not lose track of your interesting observations. So first, panelists, as you know, the audience today is made up of people highly focused on water-related problem solving. And it's worth highlighting that in addition to those that joined us this afternoon, as Nina has alluded to, your comments, your contribution today as panelists are going to live on into digital perpetuity, because our ultimate intent is to record these sessions and share them not only with this cohort, but with hundreds of folks in the future who participate in this kind of work. And this is great reference, great inspiration, and your insight is greatly appreciated. So on behalf of everyone here, thanks again for joining this meeting today. And I guess on a personal note, I couldn't be more excited about today's panel. I know Nina and I have discussed it at length because, as some of you know, I've worked in water loss management and municipal water system optimization as a consultant, across the globe for 2 decades. So honestly, as a year-ending event, this is basically a dream panel for me. So I'm very much looking forward to this, as the attendees are. So today, we're focused on AI-enabled water technology. And as we've all likely observed, AI-enabled is more and more common descriptor that's being offered up by sellers. Lots of water tech companies and almost every industry and at almost every level are kind of touting AI capabilities, thinking that maybe it'll help their sales prospects. And what I'd really like to focus on today and explore, if you wouldn't mind as panelists in this conversation, is the buyer's perspective on AI. The best way for our growing businesses, the businesses that Foresight and WaterNEXT supports, will be to get perspective, to hear from industry colleagues who are successfully delivering on AI commitments with buyers. Hopefully today we can better understand who the actual buyers are for this type of, AI-enabled solution. For example, from my experience, water sector work is typically dealing with municipal ops managers, civil engineers, field technicians, and we're hoping to find out from your experience, are these the parties, the people who are buying AI to help with their decision making, or are there, new departments in the city or otherwise, third parties, getting involved with water system problem solving for complementary reasons, like data scientists, billing departments, mayor's offices? Basically, we're looking today to discover what is the AI-enabled water tech buyer persona. So with these questions in mind for this panel today, we're fortunate to have three very knowledgeable and experienced panelists here to share their insights into this topic. So to begin, I'd like to take a few minutes to let our speakers introduce themselves and their organizations, starting with Tim, then Saurabh, and then finally Neil, who are all innovators with differing perspectives on the industry and different approaches to understanding this industry. So Tim, putting you on the hot seat, could you please take a minute or two to describe your organization, your ambitions within the AI and water loss realm? And if you're willing, if you could each feel free to share some way that water challenges are being tackled with AI.
Sure. Thanks, Evan. Well, thank you, Foresight and others for joining us today. So as mentioned by Nina, I'm with Digital Water Solutions. We are a technology company that went through the Foresight program, as well as some other accelerators, such as Brew 2.0 down in Milwaukee. We have developed a combination hardware and software platform that looks for leakage in water distribution systems in the municipal side, as well as monitoring their pressure, looking for transient events, and also capturing water temperature. And then using machine learning models and some deep learning to pull that together to actually be able to pinpoint where leaks are. And we see very much our role in this space is a permanent leak monitoring solution for our clients. So installation of our technology, 24/7 monitoring and alerting to issues that might arise. Just so you know, as a background, I've spent 30 plus years, I know I don't look that old, in the water sector as a consultant and as a technology startup. So we have, this is the third company that I've been involved with. The first two we have successfully grown and sold to other parties. And so we're excited to be starting up this solution. I'm going to say right off the start, the term AI is overused, Evan, whatever the space is. And I would encourage you as we're going through this not to think necessarily about AI and how you sell AI, but back to your value proposition. What is it that you are actually meeting the need of, right? So I can talk about AI all I want, but at the end of the day, the people I'm selling to are more interested in how I am going to assist them, not in, am I using AI to assist them? So just keep that in mind as we go through the discussion today. We'll talk about how we are using AI in the water space, certainly as a panel, but I also want you to stay focused on what you're delivering to your clients or potential clients down the road.
Tim, you're speaking in terms that are near and dear to my heart. So I really appreciate this because, as you say, this term is thrown around so frequently, and it's so interesting because your clients are not necessarily seeking you out because of your link to that offering. It's your ability to serve efficiently, cost effectively. And if those are the tools you're using, excellent. If you've mastered those tools to bring them to bear on the challenge of those problems, you're a problem solver. It's not about your AI addition to it. So I think that's really interesting point that we're going to dig into further, and maybe even at our seminar at the end of the month on communication and communication of your value proposition to your clients. I mean, communications are the key to this, and effectively packaging your offering is I can't wait to dig into this. So thank you, Tim.
Great.
You're
Thanks,
touching on a
Evan.
topic that we're all going to dig into. So Rob, could we turn it over to you? I know you have another interesting perspective on how the market looks at this.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. My name is Saurabh Singh, and as Nina mentioned, I work for Blue Tech Research. Blue Tech Research is a management consulting firm along with market intelligence platform. So the company is divided into two segments. One where we have the market intelligence platform where we track all the innovative companies, patents related with water technology, how AI space is changing, and which companies are at the forefront, which investors are interested in which kind of technology. So this is the market intelligence platform side, but I sit in the consulting side where we directly work with companies like Xylem, Evoqua, Suez, and we help them with their market entry strategy, along with helping companies related with private equity, venture capital firms who are interested in investing in AI solution, and we help them with the due diligence so that they can make the informed decisions. Along with this, we are also partnering with NRC, and we help small SMEs with the mentorship or the supports which they are required to scale from 0 to 1. So that's also one of the offering which we provide. I don't have that much of experience. I just turned 30 6 days back, so not unlike Tim, but I have been working in the water sector from past 10 years. Previously, I worked with engineering consulting firms like AECOM and Jacobs, and then I did my master's in hydroinformatics and water management from a funded program by European Commission, where I studied each semester in 4 different countries. So that was quite unique. And my master's was in hydroinformatics and water management, which is a combination of water engineering, hydraulic and hydrological designing, along with data science analytics. So maybe I can share some ideas from those perspectives. But at the same time, I have been working with a very large number of startups working in space in companies like Fido, and helping companies like Microsoft conduct these kind of partnership, which they have done with Fido or with other companies. So I'm happy to answer any question, and also happy to share how market is changing and how this space looks like from the investor perspective as well, which can be unique. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Saurabh. And as we go, I understand you also have some slides to complement and share some insights. So after our third panelist, Neil, introduces himself, perhaps we can return to that and dig into it, because I know this will be to the benefit of our audience, if you wouldn't mind. We'll have those ready. And at the moment, Neil, I'll turn it to you. Again, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you, Evan. Yes, I'm CTO of Fido. My background is I'm actually a physicist, scientist / inventor. Done various businesses through the years in telecoms and data. And Fido kicked off about 5 years ago. In fact, we met Tim sometime in that cycle as we started and grew. We've just gone through sort of A and B rounds of funding, and we're now selling into the US and corporate spaces as we discussed. Come back to the AI and marketplace discussion, and I think the totally echo Tim's positioning, and I think that you've got to establish what is your value proposition. So actually, we've come full circle to almost an AI assisted tool to help things deliver quicker, more efficiently. And that's what seems to land as a commercial proposition. That whole proof cycle of what you delivered just being more efficient, more quick, and more efficient and cheaper to deliver product and service, and the savings on the water is actually what people buy. The vision of selling an AI, this is always clever, but reality is they don't buy that. They want a story that says this works, but it has to deliver a result in the field as you do it. And you know, as you were talking, I was just thinking, you know, when we started this, the whole concept of LLMs didn't exist. They only really came out in the last year or two. You know, and you have to adapt and pivot to make use of these things, and they are very useful. They are a great tool. You know, we've embedded it into our platform as a leak assistance tool to help the sort of novice leak engineers find results more quickly. But it's been an interesting evolution, and we pivoted a couple of times as the market changes and as we learn about what people actually do in the marketplace. And as Saurabh explained, we've got a newer commercial model where we deal with corporates and do water detection funded by corporates within the water space to deliver savings on the VWB. So it's quite a mixed proposition, but actually we've refined it down to it has to deliver a result. And actually, in a way, we've almost stopped leading the AI part. The AI is part of what we do, but people don't buy AI as it is. They buy a product and a service.
It's really interesting, Neil. You've touched on some topics we'd like to dig into. One about collaborations, the sort of joint approach you take to funding and pursuing projects, who's interested and why, how you've built those collaborative relationships and brought them to perhaps municipal partners. All of this I'd really like to explore, and I know that our team would, because even down to the choices of language, the communications, again, just using the term replenishment, right, for this type of activity, and who's motivated by that terminology, and the missionary work behind building, a consortium approach. There's a lot to explore there. So I appreciate you bringing that up and opening the door to this discussion. Thank you. So Rob, if you wouldn't mind, just so everyone's on the same page, would it be an okay time to ask if you could add a little bit of color for us on the existing marketplace as related to the slides you've brought?
Yeah, sure, Evan. Oh, yeah. So for the first question which you asked, maybe I can start with answering that, and I can invite other panelists also to add in. Like, who is buying actually the AI-enabled water technology? And I think of like 4 players in different categories who are actually very keen in purchasing or taking the services. Not purchasing in a way M&A, but also taking or collaborating with the company. The first one is utility, and we can clearly understand utilities, they need to do leak detection. That's one of the area where a lot of companies are putting effort, not just from the companies or value proposition side, but even it's nearly about to get regulated or by countries setting up their goals. Let me know if you can see my slides.
There we go. I can see that. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I was starting with the utilities, and as you know, Thames Water has been working with Fido, and a lot of utilities, especially in UK and Europe, they have some kind of target, as Nina also mentioned about the target set by WaterNEXT with the leak detection. But in UK, UK government has set the target that by 2025, they will reduce the leakage by 25%, and by 2050, by 50% leakage will be reduced. So these kind of targets set by government as well as countries are propelling multiple companies, startups to work with utility. But that is one which maybe Neil can double click on that. But I would like to focus on it from the industrial perspective. You can see at the slide here, Xylem has planned to increase their digital revenue from 35%, which was in 2021, to 50% by 2025. And how they will do that? They will emphasize on the smart water solution, which is a part of AI, is a part of this, and the analytics. And I analyzed the past 10 years M&A growth, which Xylem has done. And you will notice that out of, let's say, like 1 to 11, like 9 of them were in the digital space or AI space. Companies with Iderka, which they started with a minority stake, they recently take the full company stake as well. With other companies, the big M&A which happened with Census, which was more than $1.7 billion. And what Xylem is mentioning, that the digital spending CAGR between 2025 on this area will be 3x higher compared to other spending. So it can clearly show that Xylem is one of the example of the company which is very much engaged in this area and want to invest. And they are the one who is buying digital powered or AI powered water solution. But apart from Xylem, there are other companies like Snyder or Pentair, which are investing heavily in this space. So this is an example from the industrial water user, but there is a new space which is emerging. Let me go to the next slide, which is corporate end users. Companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Nestle, PepsiCo, they have been using a lot of water for their productions, like Coca-Cola uses a lot of water for creating Coca-Cola drinks. Microsoft uses at their data centers. So all these big Fortune 500 companies in 2021, they started coming up with their own water related target, which were similar like carbon targets. And they mentioned that by 2030 or by 2035, we will become water positive. And how they will do that? They will invest in water replenishment project, which is outside the fence line, where they will replenish water at the various basins where they are operating. And the other side is inside the fence lines, where they will be optimizing the water uses by coming up with innovative cooling facilities to reduce the water uses at their data centers. So I analyzed some of the companies with whom Microsoft has partnered, and then an interesting trend came up, which is they are partnering with a lot of companies which are AI-driven startups. For example, Agonova, which is working in AI based leak detection pipe assessment, which is based in Spain. Similarly, Fido, as Neil will talk more about this, Microsoft has been working with Fido in Thames Water in UK as well as in Mexico. Companies like Botanical Water Technology is Microsoft is partnering with. So you can see there is a trend coming up where Microsoft notices those startups which can help them do the water replenishment, and which are the ones which have AI offering which can be integrated with their cloud system. And all this, once this company make a partnership with the startups, we have noticed that major VC and PE firms, they notice this partnership and then they get keen to invest in this. For example, Emerald Technology Venture, which is a pure play water based VC firm, has invested in more than 3 companies, which you can see on the next slide. And apart from this, this was an example from Microsoft, but there are various other companies like Coca-Cola, Intel. They have been investing and conducting partnership with Calimo, which is a AI-based big data and crop irrigation management provider, and which is helping them achieve their water-related targets. Once Calimo made a partnership with Microsoft, Emerald Venture noticed that. They provided the Series A funding of $7.5 million last year, which also helped them to propel or get the partnership with Coca-Cola and Intel. We have seen something similar pattern following by NDRIP, which is a gravity-fed clog-resistant drip irrigation company, which started a partnership with PepsiCo, raised the money, which was the second highest series back in 2023 when they raised $44 million. And then that also helped them to scale and get into the orbit of Google and Heineken. Something similar went with Wind as well. So here is an advice for the startups who are attending this session. The first step will be to try to land a big project with one of the corporate end users. And once you land that, you will automatically start getting attractions from VC firms who will be interested. And once you have that, try to scale up in with the money and those domain which the basins which are water stress, which will lead automatically for you to land more projects with corporates, and it will start working like a snowball cycle. So corporate end users and industrial, big industry companies like Xylem, Evoqua, Suez, these are the 2 big buyers who are investing a lot in startups based AI, along with utilities, I think, which other panelists can discuss more.
So Rob, I'm just sitting over here smiling. This is such an interesting, you've really laid out the groundwork for us in terms of context. So thank you very much. You couldn't have handed a better sort of segue into my next question, in fact. And Neil, if you don't mind, I mean, it's such a natural feed into, from what Saurabh has just said. If you would be willing, I mean, it's such good fortune that you've joined us today, because I would love to travel back in time a little bit with you, if you wouldn't mind casting your mind back to the times where you were, as a founder, you're navigating what Saurabh is proposing, right? You were in a position to address perhaps an idea brought to you by Microsoft in their desire to balance out their withdrawals related to perhaps a London-based data center? Or, I mean, could you bring us back to how this critical initial collaboration got off the ground to give us an idea of where you perceived pitfalls, where you thought things were going to get derailed, how you brought that online? I mean, I'd be fascinated.
I mean, like all these situations, there's a bit of luck involved. So the combination of the utilities going, we've got no money to spend on investments, etc., and infrastructure, and the corporate marketplace saying, well, actually, there's hundreds of corporations want to be water positive by 2030, whatever the plan is. So it almost seemed this confluence of actually, well, they want to do this stuff and they want to save the water. The challenge was finding a space where actually you can make a contribution, make a difference by doing the project. That was the acid test set by people like Tech that said, you can't just fund water saving projects as a whole. You have to actually make a difference and have a demonstrable difference and a validated difference. And that's where we kind of learned the lesson that actually you have to be able to produce a report and an audit that has hard numbers, that shows a benefit that they could claim for their water benefit. And I think that's where the opportunity suddenly arose, where the water we were saving through doing these water loss reduction programs in large utilities meant that the numbers were significant. And we realized we could expand that and do more with it to get to, in essence, almost trade that space to say, actually, we can get this funded for you, but it has to be extra work. You can't just fund what you're doing normally. So if you're saving water through a program that you're already doing, you can't just fund that. You have to say this is a step change. There's an incremental benefit by doing this extra work. So it has to be new saving, not old saving. And that was the challenge piece. So, and thanks to people like Sarab and so Will Sarney at Water Foundry, they kind of acted as a sort of go-betweens between the corporations and the utilities and ourselves, and we drove that marketplace. And I had to give credit to Victoria. Victoria is a brilliant negotiator, contract salesman, and getting people like Microsoft across the line to do and commit these projects is not a simple process. And acting as a middleman between people like Thames Water, Las Vegas Valley, etc., to get them to sign the paperwork, and Microsoft and Tech validate the process wasn't an easy navigation. It took a lot of work to do that, but once the model's in place, it does work.
And the key here, as you mentioned, and that has been sort of the cornerstone of leak-related work in the last almost a decade, has been quantification, right? The ability to actually say, if you spray paint an X on the ground, after all of your analysis, say, if you dig here, it's worth X thousand liters per day of flow, and that it's new leak, and the repair costs, the ROI related to that per cubic meter loss has certain value to the municipality, and as such, Microsoft could pay that bill. How challenging was it to get a municipality to be willing to let a third party, essentially cover the cost of that infrastructure related insight, right?
It was a bit of a challenge because there's a strange suspicion between the utility and the municipality to say, okay, we'll accept this input to get the benefit back. And there's kind of, I guess, a bit of a hole in the marketplace where the utilities, municipalities, don't realise there's a value in this water saving, and to them, it's I think you said earlier, one in Canada wants to get from 20% down to 10%. That's going to cost.
That's in air quotes, by the way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, to say that's a big shift.
Yeah.
Basically, that way, that's to halve your losses across the whole network. That's an enormous chunk of work to get done. And that's going to take a lot of technology, effort, and commercial agreements to get that done. So actually, a lot of this is around the commercials place, is the commercial agreements and the contracting to get these things in place. What we put together was we realised we had to have an audit trail of the work. This is something we've realised that from the early days, you got to get, from the point where you investigate a leak and actually mark it up and repair it, you want photographic evidence of the repair. Luckily in the UK, you get DMA flow data, so you actually get measurable differences. You can see the flow changes, or you need water balances from other routines. but actually put that into a report and a structure that they can consume and reuse for people like the corporation, because actually they have to report these as part of their ESG commitments going forwards. So they need a documentation and paperwork that supports that process. And that's actually, to be honest, that's a significant amount of work apart from the actual saving the water. Reporting it is an overhead that actually you have to take on.
And you raised an interesting point, and I can see Tim making a comment in here sort of related to this, that, you know, water in Canada is cheap, but in fact, you're driving to the cost or perceived cost for the third party corporate partner, not necessarily against the cost of the water. It's the volume of the water and the perceived risk through CSR, you know, the CSR policies of these corporate entities and their motivation to generate revenue or to show a balance against that potential revenue loss. It's not the value of the water to the municipality that you're working against in terms of investment in this work.
Yeah, the cash value really stands up. I mean, the
Yep.
water itself, water is, I mean, obviously it's a sound that it's too cheap. So actually, the commercial savings, unless you're doing desal plants and you've got high value water, you know, the California structure, it starts to pay back. But where water is so cheap, it's actually more the environmental impact. You're still pumping it, you're still treating it and doing chlorination, so you still have a cost of doing that. But it's more about the over time that will become more stressed. And obviously there's a lot of areas now that become more and more water stressed, and actually doing the reduction of water stress in areas that have a challenge. And this is where people like Coca-Cola get involved, where they want to build a bottling plant in Tijuana. They're going to impact the local community by X billion gallons a day or whatever it is. Therefore, they have to demonstrate they're putting back some water into that community, because actually that will create water stress in that environment. So
would you mind, Tim, you know, you stuck your head out with that comment, but I wanted to actually ask you, part of the assumption in what Neil is describing, you know, he said quite calmly that, you know, we have a track record of infrastructure loss, you know, we have a long history of infrastructure leak management work and quantification and so on. Your company, you have a history of work, but you are also trying to embed your new technology, find buyers, and looking for investment for R&D related pursuits to build your company, to build that track record, to get that reputation, that trust, so that you can pursue corporates and so on. That R&D pursuit, that's also a joint venture effort in many ways. Could you share a bit for the others, you know, the companies that are a stage before this? You know, there's a long road to getting that trust.
Yeah, sure. You know, it's nice when you have established the trust and the technology or the services that you're offering begin to sell themselves, because the water space is a small space globally, to be honest with you. And you will run into the same people over and over again. But if you can get to a point where you develop trust, they will tell two friends who will tell two friends who will tell two friends, right? So that's really the goal here. You know, our journey began, as I call it, the high, you know, fast-paced water space. We patented our technology back in 2009 initially, commercialized in 2018. So that's a 9-year cycle of doing R&D in that. Our primary goal was to find an appropriate way. We worked with the University of Waterloo and continue to work with UCLA out in California on how do we actually find those leaks in plastic pipe? What's the best way to actually sound out plastic pipe? Because North American utilities are tending to migrate away from ductile iron and things that resonate to a non-resonating pipe material. And then how do you actually, you know, acoustically find that in the system? So we turned our attention to actually being in the water column. So different type of technology, and we use hydrophone technology in the water. But we had to work very closely. So we did a lot of work with NSERC, NRC IRAP, you know, so, you know, some of the things Cliff was saying early on, we got a lot of non-dilutive funding from organizations that allowed us to pilot. So we were able to do pilots in a number of municipalities that were jointly paid for by NSERC, and it allowed us to start to build a track record. And so I would recommend that in the early days, you are looking for as much non-dilutive government funding as you can. go and leverage what the Canadian government is willing to give us as startups. It's one of the best gifts you have out there. So we spent a lot of years, we still receive funding from IRAP. We still typically run a project every year or two with them. And it is allowing us to take the technology further than it was the year before, right? So we have a very small company, there's 8 people. We are selling into places like Toronto. We are in the US, we're in multiple states in the US and continuing to sell down there. But it is coming from being able to build a case study with a client. So part of what you need to do is you can't just sell a technology and walk away. A lot of people, you were talking about, how do we talk to people, but you need to partner with the utilities or even the private companies, right? So you need to go, who is your champion? Who is going to work with us? Who is going to help us build a case study from the results that we generate for you? Now, you're assuming you're going to generate results, but in the water space, you also have to find ways to simulate results that gain traction and allow them to have confidence in your technology. So most utilities, they are slow to market. If you can get a corporate, if your tech is associated with corporate water savings or corporate water systems, they can often make decisions much quicker because they work on very much an ROI. To Neil's point with, companies that come along and are looking to offset water, again, those companies have deeper pockets than municipalities have or water utilities have or private operators have. So you can, if you target the right market, you can significantly reduce your sales cycle. And so we talk about with utilities, the sales cycle, on average could be 18 months by the time it's budgeted and cut and then rebudgeted and finally gets approved. If you're working with corporates, it can be within a week or two if you have something that has value in their eyes, right? Because they can just go, yep, let's make that decision. That's inexpensive enough for us to pilot. Hey, it worked, great. Let's talk about rolling out a larger project. So it's a road, right? And it's a continuum. So we focus mostly on utilities. We don't have that same corporate bent because we're looking at municipal leakage, not looking at leakage on internal pipes in a corporate environment. Not that we couldn't, it's just not where our focus is. The other thing I'm going to say is answer your phone. And I say that because I put off answering this weird number from a company that sells products in the market. And 3 months later, I finally answered because I was just fed up of them calling me. Anyway, it was Amazon looking to do the same thing that Microsoft is doing. So I kind of put off Amazon for 3 months while they were trying to reach us to work with them, right? So answer your phone, don't pursue everything, know what you want to pursue, go after it, build case studies, take the non-dilutive funding, and eventually you will start to attract investors, right? So it's a journey and a path, and good on all of you. Good on all of you for doing this.
I at this moment, I'm incredibly grateful that this is being recorded. I mean, there's so many gems in there, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, to sort of carry on from that, Neil and Saurabh, I mean, Neil, if you could, one event that stands out for me is the London-based project you have. And I wondered, touching on what Tim was saying, how critical was geography for you and for your partners in terms of identifying a region that is ripe for this? How did you determine where to aim? Was it just good fortune because you were a UK-based technology company? I mean, how did this come to be that there's such a confluence of good fortune?
There was, because we've been working with people like Thames and Northumberland and Yorkshire, we could see this massive gap between what they wanted to do and what they were actually achieving. So there was almost a hole that said, if we can fill this gap between what you're trying to do and actually what you're funded to do, because most of them will be funding challenged. That was their problem. So slightly changed in the UK because they're mostly now all funded by corporate investment groups to fund these water companies, but they still run very tight budgets, and their ability to change their approach to a solution is limited. They'll try an innovation because they'll try everything once, but actually converting an innovation to an actual consumed product that they spend money on is a transition that is not, and Tim recognizes as well. So they are slow to buy, they are slow to turn, and you have to be prepared for that process. There's no, I think the smaller utilities in say in the US, where you've got small medium businesses, they'll make a decision more quickly. But the larger corporations, they are risk averse in the extreme. So that is your challenge when you're selling into the water space, is that they don't like change. You have to push them quite hard to make them make a decision.
Yeah. And
Also to add in from the geography perspective, Ivan, because sometimes I do work with a lot of major corporate, and as you know, like water problem is a very local problem. So they're also very specifically looking for a specific basin where they operate. For example, Amazon reached out to us and they said that we would like to do a project in Ebro River Basin, which is in the north of Spain. And why was the reason? Because they wanted some water, and the basin or the region is facing water scarcity, especially in the summer months. So
Yep.
we started conducting a project looking into it, why this is happening. And we found that the 90% of water used in that basin are getting used by farmers. Why farmers and how? Because they are using a irrigation technique called flood irrigation. They're flooding the entire land, and then that's how they were doing the irrigation. And after the end of this project, we recommended Amazon which company to go forward with and how they can partner with farmer and integrate the drip irrigation by NDrip or CropX so that they can optimize the water uses. So from the geography perspective, I think corporates are looking for solution, but solution varies depending upon geography. What they want to do in the coastland in Australia will be very different compared to Bangalore water project, where they want to do lake restoration. And also, it also boils down to the ROI, which kind of project will make more sense for them so that they can disclose the benefit in CDP or ESG reporting. So yeah, I think that's how they are looking into it. Water basin, which are in water stress, and then looking for the project which partner can provide solution there.
amazing. I I appreciate that, Saurabh. Thank you. And I wonder, there are add-on questions to follow that. So I'm going to continue with this line of discussion, but I need to put a pause on to ask Nina or others on the Foresight team if there have been comments or questions that I've missed through the chat before our time disappears.
We had a few questions that other people answered, and some of them I think we can take with us and answer after. I think Stan has a question. Municipalities are notoriously bureaucratic and unions are involved. Where is the economic driver? All they have to do is pass on costs through increased taxes, layers of bureaucracy. Who can make a decision? Who is willing to risk their position by making a tough decision, a tough call?
That's interesting. And I mean, to summarize, perhaps Neil and Tim, with your project-related experience, who are you speaking to sell these larger scale, costly, somewhat experimental in some cases? Who's the receiving entity? Is it a council? Is it the ops engineers?
Sorry, Neil, I'll just start. I mean, our persona, I think you mentioned that at the beginning, Evan, right? The persona of who we sell to, it ranges, and it's either right at the top. So in Canadian municipalities, it's your chief administrative official typically. Council are not the people you're going to sell to unless there's a water main break on their street and interrupts them going to work or something, right? It's the people who actually have a long-term view of the municipality. It can then go down from there, and it'll be the manager of water distribution. It could be the IT department who are interested in the technology. It's the weirdest thing. The one we're seeing crop up more and more is water utilities want to be seen as being innovative. They just don't want to spend any money on it, but they create groups called innovation groups. And so they'll approach you, and this is just a word of warning. If the innovation group approaches you, it's for them to play with the tools and the technology. It's not for it to ever become a commercial opportunity for you. So at that point, you say to them, that's really great, but I want to talk to somebody in operations, somebody who actually has to live with the technology after you've evaluated it. So that's just a word of warning about these innovation groups. Lovely people, best of heart, but getting it from the innovation group into mainstream can often be challenging. So there's a wide range of personas, Evan, and we've dealt all the way from like the accountants, depends on who's buying, right? Who has the money for the project. So part of your process is figuring out who's actually willing to pay for your solution, right? It's not necessarily a given persona. There may be people who you are not aware of an organization are willing to pay. So spend some time figuring out who's actually impacted most by what you're trying to solve. Don't go in and try to sell them on something that they don't have an issue with, right? So just remember that, right? This is all value proposition aligning with their pain points.
Yep.
And if you're in there trying to sell them leak detection and they just put in brand new pipes 10 years ago everywhere and their non-revenue water is 4%,
Yep.
You've just wasted all your time chasing them, right? So do your
Indeed.
research, know who you're pursuing.
And related to that research comment, Tim, Neil, I mean, with your experience, the partnerships that you potentially bring to bear on these, municipal challenges, have you put your finger on, a buyer persona that you think is, you're always looking for someone with the following title or certain types of, data collection challenges? Who are you targeting?
I think, as I say, Tim summarised it perfectly. I think that was an absolutely spot on the summary of the way they work. Ultimately, somebody somewhere owns the water loss equation in their either on a spreadsheet or in their daily operational work. They're the person who benefits. We were told this when we started United Utilities. There are three people: the person who benefits, the person who has budget, and the person who pays. They may be one person, but you've got to find those three. So all corporations have a set budget. So actually, if they spent the budget for this year, you've got to find budget. Even though they've got money, they've got to find a budget from someone. So do not underestimate the amount of work and effort required to negotiate with the different personas and get traction. I have a laugh at the innovation piece that we've said the same thing. Innovation is a cul-de-sac, and our view is they kind of have an innovation department, and it's to get rid of all the people trying to sell them things, right? You kind of deal with innovation, and they never deal with it again. So totally, if you get dragged into the company innovation track, you've got to find somebody who actually wants to use it and operates. And actually, that's what we found is where you get traction, because actually, if you can demonstrate there's a return on investment, it works, it's better than what they're doing, they will buy it. It may take a little bit to get it done, but they will benefit. They will buy it eventually.
This is such helpful advice. Everyone in here is making notes frantically, as I am, I'm sure. Saurabh, could I ask you, related to this and being in front of these audiences, would you know offhand, it may or may not have been part of your research, but I'd love to know, where do you think these parties are getting together each year? Is it in London to discuss water-related events? Is there a forum that you think is ideal for meeting decision makers at this kind of large vision level?
Yeah, sure, Evan. Yeah, there are global conferences where you will see a lot of corporates along with investors, regulators, utilities coming together. In North America, one of the major one is WaterNEXT, and this year it's going to happen in Chicago. So I think that should be on your target. Right now, one is ongoing, which is Aquatech in Amsterdam, which is, I will say, something equivalent of WaterNEXT, but in Europe. So these are the two major events where you will find a lot of these decision makers, but at the same time, they also present, or they're attending some smaller niche conferences, specifically, let's say for textiles, you will say Nike, Patagonia, and these kind of company there. One could be for food and beverage. We do organize, BlueTech also organize BlueTech Forum every year, where you will see more than 200 companies coming together and discussing these ideas.
Indeed, and this is in Edinburgh every year, correct?
Yeah, Edinburgh.
Fantastic.
And Edinburgh, and we switches the places as well. However, answering your previous question, I have an idea as well. Sometimes these utilities, you can go and talk to the decision maker. That's one way. The other way is to find out which utilities are facing issues. And this is something called consent degree. So EPA, they track all the utilities which were offenders of sewage over water flow. And for example, DC Water, they had more than 6,000 times in an year. And due to that, they put a fine of more than 2 million on them. And now they're investing like billions of dollars to fix this. So if you will go on website, EPA's website and put consent degree, you will find a list of all the utilities in US which have faced this kind of fines due to water overflow. And then you can go specific to those utilities and find out who will be the correct person. And then I think it can reduces your effort from 49,000 utility to 40 utility. So I think that's one idea. And secondly, from the corporate water stewardship, Neil covered from the utility side and Tim, but corporate water stewardship have also created a position called sustainability lead or water lead, something equivalent of Eliza Robert in Microsoft. You will see Tara Varghese in Google. You will see Vetri in Nike. So you have to find these guys. You can do on LinkedIn, but usually you will see the name as water lead or corporate water stewardship lead. And you can find these people, and they are the major decision makers who are leading the effort of these big corporates with my water positive goals.
What an actionable way to end this. I honestly, I'm so disappointed that this is over personally. I would like to have everyone in a room chatting for an afternoon. I think it's such an engaging topic. And to the panelists, I mean, I feel like we're just getting started. There's such a wealth of information that we could mine in this digital space. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Nina reluctantly to close out, but thank you all again.
Well, also from my side, thank you so much, Evan, for moderating this session, and Tim, Saurabh, and Neil for your valuable insights. What I really loved is that you gave some hands-on advices. I think that's very helpful. And as we said, we recorded this session so we can share it afterwards, and we can also use it for future education of our cohorts. Which is very beneficial. I've seen there is a question, Andy, you had a question to Tim. Tim, if you don't mind, if I make this connection by email for any follow-up questions.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you so much. But with that, we would like to wrap it up. I just want to highlight that we have another WaterNext event at the end of March. And I think it's a good next event to the one we had today, because the one on March 27 focuses on building business growth through effective storytelling. It's the product tech development versus the storytelling business growth we're focusing on. And I think today you already got quite a lot of good advices for that. So at the end of March, on March 27, we will talk with a few innovators about their challenges, how they overcome it, and how they created opportunities. And with that, we would like to wrap it up. To the speakers, thank you so much for joining us today. This was very valuable, and we're looking forward to continuing this conversation around water and AI. Thank you so much.